Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is part 2 of our special 2-part series on the 2019 legislative session. Make sure you watch part 1. We're going to dive into some big issues in this show as well. Joining me today from the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House, Casey Becker. Casey, great to have you again.
Thanks for having me.
And the veteran of the program, Chris Hobart, the Senate Minority Leader. When you were on last time, you were the Senate Majority Leader, so you're kind of flip-flopping around.
Hope to be the Majority Leader again, but for now, Minority.
All right, and hoping that you will not be in the majority is Senator Rhonda Field. Senator, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And also Senator Lois Court.
Happy to be back.
It's great having you on the show again. And my neighbor, Lori Sain from the House of Representatives.
Thanks for letting me be here.
It's great having you, Lori. So we have the exact proportion of Democrats and Republicans as is represented by the 100 members of the General Assembly. We're going to start off with one of the most controversial bills, Senate Bill 181, which addressed the regulation of oil and gas production in the state. Lori, I know you were a huge supporter of 181. All right, give me your...
You trying to get me a primary or what? So Governor Polis gave me the Jedi mind trick and said, this isn't going to hurt Weld County. But I just got another call from another company that provides oil field services saying they're moving to Wyoming with their 125 employees. This is affecting Weld County. And in fact, we have some, I would call them de facto moratoriums going on right now, where some cities and towns are starting to shut down permitting processes until rulemaking is done. So that's something that we warned about. If we don't keep permitting oil and gas, a lot of that revenue is going to severely hurt our local governments, our schools, and the state government.
So who was in favor of 181? Like, Casey, why don't you start off? What did you like about 181? And address Lori's concern. When you have a 125-person company picking up and leaving, that's a big deal.
So I was the House sponsor of 181, and it was a response to frustration of a lot of communities for a long time not getting sufficient say in the oil and gas drilling that was happening in their backyards at unprecedented levels. So we really wanted to give local communities a greater role in the siting of oil and gas. We also wanted to make sure that health and safety would be considered first in state permitting. And so those are the main things that the bill accomplished. And I think if there had been more give on the oil and gas industry over the years, it probably wouldn't gotten to this level where so many communities felt like it was a crisis. We also did some things in the bill like more disclosure of flow line information for neighborhoods, because as we know, in April of 2017, a house exploded, killed 2 people and injured another. We want to make sure that our air quality isn't negatively impacted by oil and gas. So in the bill, it requires the AQCC, the Air Quality Control Commission, to look at methane venting and flaring, just basically the impact of methane on air quality. And then we require oil and gas to clean up their own orphan wells. Orphan wells are wells that have been abandoned without being plugged properly. And right now there's over a $30 million liability onto the state from oil and gas not cleaning up their own wells. So there were a lot of things that we've been working on over the years that we've just never been able to accomplish, and that's what this bill did. The bill is not a ban or a moratorium. Cities and counties, even before the legislation passed, could do temporary moratoriums and have done those to see if they have the right rules and regulations process in place to get feedback from their communities. So the bill didn't change anything around that, and it is not a state ban or moratorium. And in fact, the Senate Majority Leader, Fenberg, who was a sponsor with me, he and I both issued statements saying, no, this bill is not a state ban or moratorium, and it doesn't change the law at all regarding local communities.
And the executive director of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission has made it clear that permitting is going to continue, and certain permits that I guess are non-controversial, less controversial, are going to be processed normally and are being processed normally, but permits that involve areas of environmental sensitivity or near schools or whatever, those are going to be kind of, I think, subject to a much greater level of scrutiny. So, Chris, I want you to comment, but Lori, just quickly, so in Weld County, which has a lot of people very supportive of the oil and gas industry, those communities, if they want, they don't have to adopt stricter regulations. Is that a fair statement or not? Even though, I mean, there's certainly some statewide, but they don't have to exercise that authority if they don't want to impose stricter regulations on the industry. Is that a fair statement?
And that is something we fought for and was added in the bill. However, that can change with the next city council. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of these companies consolidating and moving out of state, including to Texas. So I said, I'm getting these calls, I continue to get these calls where people are no longer willing to stay in an environment that is so uncertain.
Chris, what's your take on the bill?
When I first read 181, I blurted out, this is recession by legislation. I am grateful for the amendments that were put on both in the Senate and then in the House, and industry feels somewhat more comfortable with it. My wife and I bought our first house in 1987 at the beginning of an oil and gas bust in the Metro Denver area in Colorado. I hope people understand that about 40% of the office space here in downtown Denver is occupied not necessarily just by oil and gas companies, but law firms, engineering firms, people who provide services to oil and gas. And those people don't live in Weld County. Those people live in Arapahoe and Jefferson and Douglas County. And that's what we saw in 1987. And I don't want my sons to live through that. I don't want anyone to have to live through that recession. I think what we're starting to see, Representative Sain's account of companies moving to other states, that's a fact of a free market, and we've made it harder for those companies to make a profit to compete here. And if there are states that are more welcoming, they're going to take their jobs and their time and talent to those other states. It's a $31 billion a year positive revenue source for the state of Colorado, not tax revenue, but total economic impact. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that we don't experience a recession because of this legislation. I hope to be proven wrong.
And I want to push back on what Chris just said a bit, because he was saying in the previous episode that we taped that he recognizes that education is all about local control. And this bill has a ton of local control in it. And for me, the overarching issue here is public safety is one of the most important things that the legislature can address. And that's what this bill was about, was public safety, and recognizing that local control is absolutely what Colorado is about, and giving that local control to those city councils and county commissioners to decide what is right for their communities.
In fact, the bill creates regulatory certainty for businesses. They were facing a lot of uncertainty in communities that were really angry and were planning on introducing future ballot measures. So I think it actually gives them more certainty about how things are going to operate in Colorado. And I don't think that we should be promoting business at the expense of public health and safety, at the expense of air quality. Those things are right now being externalized. Instead of the business being responsible for it, now local communities are responsible for it. And that's just not the way it should be.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to talk about the climate change bill from the General Assembly.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to Aaron at harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
Safely stop fires around your home. Introducing the Fire Ice XT 20-ounce aerosol canister. Fire Ice XT is an eco-friendly water-based fire suppressant gel. Unlike a traditional fire extinguisher, Fire Ice XT is a highly effective, non-toxic firefighting agent that is easy and safe to use around your home, family, and pets. Available at Amazon.com or call 800-924-4874.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the 2019 General Assembly and the legislation which passed and the legislation which failed. So one of the bills that passed was on climate change. Casey, you were obviously instrumental in that. What do you think it will accomplish?
So House Bill 1261 puts carbon reduction goals in statute for the first time, and then requires a state agency to help us figure out how we're going to meet those carbon reduction goals. I think climate change is an absolute imminent crisis, and Colorado is uniquely affected by the impacts of climate change. Obviously, severe weather is something we know here well in Colorado. Droughts, fires, reduced snowpack. These are all things we're having to contend with. So this bill says we're going to focus on carbon reductions, and that will largely be achieved first through the utility sector. Xcel Energy has decided to voluntarily reduce their carbon to 100% reduction by 2050, 80% reduction by 2030. So we are seeing utilities move to that model anyway because they know it's something they have to address, and actually they see benefits in renewable energy. So, you know, people in Colorado move here because of the quality of life, and the impacts from climate change are affecting that.
So Lori, give me your take on that bill, since it was a House bill.
Great, and I would believe that they believe it's a crisis, except for we're the only state in the union does not consider hydroelectric power as green energy. And we were a pioneer in that, and we have these things called mountains, and there's this thing called snow that falls on them every single year, and gravity works every single time, and it moves downhill, which generates this wonderful power. So some of our rural electric associations actually had 20% renewable energy power through electricity, and yet this state will not recognize that and forces them to buy more solar panels and other unreliable energy sources, which has to be backed up by coal, and is making all of our bills much, much higher.
So was there any effort, I have to agree with you, and this has been an issue for a long time, that hydro's not included. Was there any effort to amend any of the legislation so that hydro would be included?
In fact, hydro is included, just not at extremely high levels. And but the climate change bill is different than that. The climate change bill is really about reductions in carbon emissions, continuing to reduce. Whether hydro is counted or not as renewable energy, we still know we have to reduce carbon.
All right.
Can I say something on that?
Absolutely.
Because those large reservoirs are the largest batteries on Earth. That's where you can store all that potential energy to back up those unreliable energy sources. So just imagine green energy chasing green energy and backing it up. If the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining, you have hydroelectric power to back that up. And yet, again, we did try to amend that bill, and it was not accepted.
All right, that seems to me would have been a reasonable approach. Let's talk about, speaking of use of carbon-based fuels, transportation. Various studies say we have a $9 billion backlog in maintenance and repair on our roads. I think some studies say if you also incorporate the expansion of transportation systems in the state, we really need something on the order of $21 billion. Tell me what happened with transportation this year and why we seem to have this constant annual struggle to deal with just fixing our roads and making it so that we're not all stuck in traffic. Chris, I'm going to let you start off.
Well, one success that we had in a bipartisan way this session is on the budget. The Constitution requires us to pass a budget, and unlike Congress in Washington, D.C., we have to pass a budget that is balanced. We only spend or allocate the money that the taxpayers actually give us. We don't print money or borrow money. One of the things that we accomplished in a bipartisan, bicameral way was adding another $70 million for a total of $300 million of general fund revenue to go to transportation. The way we fund transportation to make decisions, a little bit of trivia, the last time the General Assembly made a decision on what road or bridge got built occurred in 1899. It was a wagon road between Leadville and Pueblo. So CDOT, people like mayors, town or city councils, county commissioners, they make the decisions on what projects get done in their jurisdictions, not the legislature. So I'm proud that we were able to actually put money there for transportation funding and leave it to the authorities who know best what needs to happen in their communities rather than make that a legislative sort of metro-centric decision.
All right, but that $300 million, that's a one-shot deal. Yes, sir. There's no guarantee we're going to have that next year. Lois, please.
Well, another thing to realize is that historically, the state has relied on gas tax to pay for our entire infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. And that's a diminishing return. And we are not figuring out, as of yet, exactly how to incorporate electric vehicles, for instance, into that system. We also know that cars are more efficient, which is great, but that means less gas being bought and therefore less tax being collected. So trying to figure out a way to find general fund money, which historically has not been available for transportation, is one of the challenges that we have because the gas tax is insufficient for the needs that we have.
So the gasoline tax hasn't been raised since like 1992, so over a quarter of a century. Why not ask voters, go to voters and ask them to adjust it for inflation? If you did that, I think it would go up probably by 15 cents. Each penny generates roughly 30 million. That'd be 450 million a year. And if you bonded that, you would probably be at something like 12 to 15 billion dollars. You could do almost everything you need to do. So why not do that?
In the short term, yes. I think what you're proposing, though, is let's tax 8-track tapes or cassette tapes.
I'm
or
for
CDs.
that too.
As Senator Corda pointed out, this is a diminishing return as we move away from gas and diesel-powered vehicles toward hybrid and fully electric vehicles. That's not a long-term solution, and if you look at miles driven, that's not a good solution to raise the gas.
I'm going to disagree because I think a lot of people have a misconception that suddenly the vehicles on the road are all going to be electric or hybrid. I mean, the percentage of vehicles that are electric or hybrid is tiny today, and you're looking at to have the type of impact that Senator Court mentioned or that you're mentioning, Senator. You're looking at a 20, 30, 40-year outlook, because the reality is when people buy a car today, they're keeping it for a decade or longer, and the turnover in the fleet is a 10 to 15 years. So diesel cars, internal combustion engines, they're going to be around much longer, I think, than people realize. So I would, and plus we're growing. Even though we have much greater efficiency, we have so many more vehicles on the road that even with that efficiency, the number of miles driven really is extraordinary. Please.
The truth is there are no easy answers to fund this.
I gave you one.
Not only have we, not increased the gas tax, but it's not indexed to inflation, and 23 cents in 1992 does not buy you the same thing as 23 cents in 2019. So, if that's what voters will support, then I would support it. But it's not easy to get voters in Colorado to support anything. And we're going to keep looking at solutions. But, there have been entities that have gone to the ballot with citizen initiatives, and it's just an ongoing challenge.
That's right. We voters do not like more or higher taxes. And many of us think that, hey, you've got a $34 billion budget, you should be able to find the dollars for our highways and roads.
Let's correct that for just a second. Out of that, only about 11 or 12 at this point is general fund.
Right. The rest is federal.
Exactly. So we don't have control,
Well,
or
federal
other
and
kinds
fee.
of fees and fees that are designated. So we only have control over around 11 of that. So we have to be really careful when we talk that way.
All right. Well, to me, $11 billion is still a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and 40% of it goes to K-12.
All right. Well, we can talk about that too, but we're going to take our last break. We'll be right back to wrap up.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
Safely stop fires around your home. Introducing the Fire Ice XT 20-ounce aerosol canister. Fire Ice XT is an eco-friendly water-based fire suppressant gel. Unlike a traditional fire extinguisher, Fire Ice XT is a highly effective, non-toxic firefighting agent that is easy and safe to use around your home, family, and pets. Available at Amazon.com or call 800-924-4874.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
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 I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our final segment in our two-part series on the 2019 Colorado legislative session. All right, I want to give each of you a minute to make a final comment, prediction, whatever you'd like. Lori, you get to go first.
Certainly. So I'm spending my interim days passing around a petition to let citizens vote on the national popular vote, whether they want to keep the product of the General Assembly or not. So I do have that on my website and on my Facebook page in case people are interested in coming and signing that petition.
All right, and we have both on the screen, so that'll help you as well. And of course, that concept was to have states band together and based on the national popular vote, cast their electoral college votes so that whoever wins the national popular vote gets elected as president. And you are unenthusiastic about that.
I definitely voted no on that, yes.
All right. Well, having won 2 elections to be an electoral college member, I actually think it's a good idea. One person, one vote. So we can have that discussion offline. Lois, your take or your comment.
Thank you. I want to remind the voters that this fall they'll have the opportunity for the first time since 2005 to decide whether or not the state should grow its economy as the state grows and keep the Tabor overage for services that the people of this state want, like K-12, higher ed, and transportation. And that's going to be called Prop CC. And the Speaker and I were the primary sponsors of that, and it did pass out of the General Assembly to be referred to the ballot.
All right, so you're asking voters, you're saying, hey, we're already collecting this money, let us spend it for these purposes.
Correct.
Okay. Rhonda, please.
You know, I just would like for all of your viewers to understand that we did some really good work this past session. And if I were to identify who the winners would be, it would be kids and families and those who are struggling with making sure that healthcare is affordable. We did so much as related to prescription drugs and access to opportunities. And so I think those are the winners. I would say our kids, our seniors, our students, housing, criminal justice. It was a good, progressive, productive session.
All right, progressive, that's a word, Chris, I don't hear you say too often.
Not often.
Give me your take, the kind of the good and the bad, in your opinion, being in the Senate minority especially.
Well, I want to give credit to Senator Fields. We did not see the repeal of the death penalty, and that will probably happen again. Her personal story is an example of where we become friends and we care about each other here. And that plays into policy decisions.
And you're talking, of course, about the murder of her son and his fiancée.
Yes. And
by the way, Rhonda, we're putting up the memorial website as well.
Oh, thank you.
You bet, absolutely.
Senator Court, I think she and I also consider each other friends, and we disagree. I was here in 2005. I voted no on Ref C, and I encourage people to vote no on CC. The General Assembly, the Colorado government went out and said, hey, if you let us keep more of your money, we'll spend it on higher ed, K through 12, and transportation. And for the years of Ref C, transportation was not adequately funded. I have the opposite view, but I just offer that not to be in disagreement, but to show people who vote differently can be very close and aligned on one point and separated on another.
Yeah, and I actually have always been impressed. I think no matter who's in control, the collegiality in the Senate especially seems to have always been at a high level, even regardless of who's in the majority.
Not necessarily the case in the House.
Are you kidding?
Hey, we took a snow day.
All right, Madam Speaker, you get the last word.
So I think it was an incredibly productive and transformative session, from criminal justice reform to bringing down healthcare costs to addressing environmental concerns in the state, funding education at a higher level than has been in a very long time, and addressing an economy that works for all. So we were addressing in every bill the day-to-day needs of Coloradans, and I think we achieved a lot. Specifically on the Tabor measure, Prop CC, that'll be at the ballot, I think if we can provide more for K-12, higher ed, and transportation without raising taxes, I think it's a very worthwhile proposal, and I hope people vote yes.
All right. Well, I want to thank each of you for joining me today, and I think it's great for Colorado citizens to see all of you together from two different parties and how collegial you can be. Speaker Casey Becker, thank you for being here. Senate Minority Leader Chris Holbert, I almost said Majority Leader again. So
no, it's not okay.
You can just get used to the minority part.
Okay, thanks for being here. Senator Fields, thank you so much. And Senator Court as well.
Thank you.
And my neighbor again, Representative Lori Sane. Really appreciate you all being here. And all of us appreciate what you do for Colorado, even when you're doing something we don't like. We know you're well-intentioned. And I think that's really...
We always do what everyone likes.
And I think that's a really important point to make. I mean, I think when you look at the 100 members of the General Assembly, everybody is trying to do what they think is best for Colorado. And I think the public really needs to understand that. All right, that's the end of part 2. Make sure you watch part 1. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Aaron Harber. We'll see you next time.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more, to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe, as I do, in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today.